Hi, I'm Wanda Montemayor. I use she, her pronouns. And today we're going to talk about the UvaldeLove project. It's a community art therapy project in response to the Robb Elementary shooting. The UvaldeLove project is going to be a 220 square foot mosaic mural at the Jardín de los Herros Park in Uvalde. And your tiles are going to be a part of this beautiful community healing project. The project is based on nature and is inspired by the community. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on the UvaldeLove project because I know a lot of you guys out there want to participate, and I want to make sure that your tiles get put in the mural. Okay, thank you so much for participating in the UvaldeLove project. I want to give you some basic skills. So we're going to first start out by how you can do this on a little or no budget. So one of the important things when you're making tiles is that they're even and that they don't warp. So I want to give you some DIYs. So the first thing is that we love drywall. This is an amazing way that you can have your class, or you could do this at home in a very affordable way. So one thing that I like to do on the drywall is I like to wrap it with electrical tape, but you actually really don't even have to. It just helps keep the crumbs on the side from falling. So I just wrap the edges of the drywall with a little bit of tape, and that's just gonna help keep it nice and clean, okay? Another great way to make a tool is to make your own clay cutter. I use fishing wire. I don't know about you guys, but I have a million keys that I don't know where they came from, so I just tie two. It actually works a lot better than some of the clay tools that you find in those kits. The clay body. Let's take a second and talk about the clay body. This is going to be an exterior mosaic mural. So we're going to need a high fire clay body. If you're in the Austin area, we're using a porcelain cone 5 clay. I like white porcelain because it's a little whiter and brighter, but any high fire clay will do. The key is it needs to be high fire, and you need to fire it on your last glaze firing at a cone 5, all right? So that's a really, really important piece in this. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to give you some basics. So right now we're going to talk about how to roll out the clay so that way it's the right thickness for the project. Why it's important that we have the same thickness is that this is going to become a beautiful mosaic mural. And we want for it to be safe. And so when someone runs their hands across it, there's a couple things that we need to pay attention to. So if one tile is really, really far in and one's really far out, then it might create a place where water can enter, and then that would hurt the integrity of the mosaic. So we want to make it as even as possible. And what we're shooting for is basically the thickness of a pencil, okay? This is a great thickness. For those of you who have slab rollers, we're looking at about a little bit between 1/2 and 1/4 inch. But if you just think about the thickness of a pencil, this is perfect, okay? Your regular number 2 pencil, that's the great, perfect thickness. So we're gonna take our clay. Let's see how we can roll that tile or that slab so that it's the perfect thickness. So why do we wedge? We wedge because we want to get those air bubbles out. And I like to make, if you notice, it looks like a little shell, right? And so I'm pushing out the air and I'm going at an angle. So let's model that one more time. I'm wedging it, I'm squishing it, trying to get that out, right? Okay. And then I like to take, get that aggression out, pound it down just a little bit to get me going. So we're aiming for a 1/4 inch thick, and I'm gonna look for air bubbles. Why don't you want an air bubble in your clay? Is because that air in the bubble could try to escape when the kiln is hitting that 2000 degrees and break your tile. So I'm looking at this slab, and this is not quite a 1/4 inch thick. Remember, we want it to be about the thickness of a pencil. But if I see something, I just pop it. I'm just gonna go pop, pop, pop. Okay, there we go. All right. So that is rolling out a slab 101. Next up, let's talk about the shapes we need. So now at this point, you have your clay body, your cone 5 or above high fire clay. You have it rolled out to about a 1/4 inch thick, or the thickness of a number 2 pencil. And now we're ready to make our tiles. So making your tile, what we're looking for is, if you look at the image, it's a beautiful nature scene, and you have opportunities to make tiles for the sky, for the grass, for the bark, okay? Now, those three items are gonna be rectangles. An easy way to figure out the thickness is your typical ruler size, actually, for width. You can go a little bit thicker, but it's okay if they're not exactly perfect. You can see that, and clay is going to shrink, we know that. We're gonna show you some examples. You're gonna want a 3-inch rectangle by 1.5 inches or 2 by 3, those are perfect. So I'm gonna give you a quick little demo. And again, I actually like for them to be a little bit different in length. Not too long, because you're gonna run into the problem of your clay warping. So the longer, the more warping, and that does actually pose a problem, right? So we're just gonna go ahead and make our rectangles happen. If you're gonna be doing this for a class, I recommend that you do this beforehand, or what I like to do is at the end of one class, you have those kids who are super fast and get everything done, start rolling out the tiles for the next class. And an easy way to store them is you can either leave them on your boards and just put some plastic over them. I like to wrap them up in trays from the cafeteria, and then they're good to go. Okay, for those of you that are doing this in a classroom, you could take that drywall and you could even cut it again, right, into a smaller piece. I feel like if you're gonna have it in smaller chunks, it is really nice to wrap it in either electrical tape, duct tape. This is painter's tape. Believe it or not, painter's tape worked awesome, okay? The key is you kind of have to rub it down so it doesn't fall apart. But you can make a clay surface super easy and affordable. Now, for those of you that have a slab roller, one of the things that a lot of ceramic artists notice is the canvas surface. So if you are using a slab roller, my ask is that you take another upcycle, take any type of gift card, hotel card key, and you just smooth that canvas texture out before you make your next tiles. So here are my rectangle shapes. Now, if you're gonna make bark, if you want your tiles to be bark, what you're gonna do is that your messages, your images are gonna be this direction. If you're gonna be making sky and grass, it's gonna be this direction. The next thing I wanna share with you is how to get your words and messages in there, okay? Not all of you have stamps, but when you use stamps or graphic images to make your letters, the viewer can understand it a lot better, and it's easier to glaze, okay? So we're gonna show you how to do it. So we're just gonna type in our message. Now that is gonna look a lot better, okay? For the viewer and also for glazing. Now, for sure, they might wanna write their names or their initials, or you want to write a message. I encourage you to write your messages. What messages do you want on your mural? Do you want messages that talk about your family, that talk about the people you love, or something that you can come back to and visit and find your tile? So whatever you write on here, I want you to think about, what do I want to be remembered? What do I want other people to see? What meaning and messages do I want to convey? And that's kind of a big order, right? If you're like, whoa, that's a lot for me to think about, then maybe something really simple is just your name. Just saying, like, I'm a part of this community, or I want for you to know that I'm with you, right? So whatever you want to write will be okay. Just make sure that it's appropriate and that it's something that you'll be proud of when you come back to in 30 years, right? This is step 1. So we just wrote UvaldeLove, and then maybe I might put my initials. Now notice, if I'm going to hand write a message in the clay, I want you guys to use a pencil versus any needle tool or anything sharp. And we're gonna talk about that in just a second. So I'm gonna use a pencil, and I'm gonna try to make it like not too deep, and I want my lines to be thick because glaze is not paint. And we have to make sure that the entire front surface and a little bit down the side has glaze on it because it needs to be water impervious. And being water impervious is really important because if water gets underneath there, the glaze pops and then it becomes vulnerable. And we want this mural to last forever and ever, right? So here we are. Here is like an example of doing, this is gonna become either grass or this might be sky, okay? Now let's just say you wanna do like just a little image this way and you're like, well, Wanda, I just wanna do a design. One of the very, very hardest things to glaze, but we can make it happen, is if you put a lot of little holes, okay? Because again, I have to make sure that glaze gets and covers every single tiny part of that. Another thing that I notice when people are making tiles and when you're handing it out, you need to ask that the shape remain the same. Because a lot of times when you get clay, I don't know about you, I want to squeeze it. I want to play with it. I want to roll it. I want to do different things with it. So there's opportunities for that. But if you're working on a specific shape, it's really important for you to say, keep the thickness the same and don't go all the way through the clay because that's a possibility. When you do things like this, you run the risk of breaking the integrity of the clay, okay? So we want to try our very best not to punch a bunch of holes in there. If somebody wants to do that, you could give them a separate piece of clay and let them go to town on a separate piece of clay, okay? And in this process, it just is a little bit harder to glaze, but you'll get to experience that, all right? So that's if we're doing bark, grass, or sky. So far we've made bark, grass, and sky. Now let's make leaves and water. So leaves and water are going to be a very simple almond shape. And I would say your almond shape is going to be about 3 inches. And so an almond shape is going to look much like that, okay? And leaves can be, what's nice about a leaf is that it's much more organic. You could get a lot. There could be some that are thicker, a little thinner. Now we're using a live oak tree. Uvalde is Tree City. And the live oak, see like over here, that shape isn't perfect. We're just gonna work it with our hands to make it nice. And you know, you could always just smooth it out. And if you notice, they're not all exactly the most perfect, right? But you get the idea. And you're gonna be decorating these in the same exact way with stamps, with messages. And again, to really emphasize, using stamps for your messages is really gonna be the best way that people will be able to enjoy the messages on these. Okay, so those are gonna be the almond shape. We're gonna be utilizing a lot of flowers in this. And even if your little people wanna make little insects, that's totally cool. But I wanna show you the blanket flower is native to Uvalde and South Texas and Central Texas. Making a simple flower, you just have them roll a little ball of clay and then they could squish it, right? And there's the beginning of the flower. And one way that they can make the edges is that they can pinch it with a pencil, just like this. So this flower isn't as sharp and pointy, but you can make it a little more pointy, see? So I started out with like just making it, and then I'm making my little wispies, right? And it's not perfect, because what is perfect, really? And then there, without rolling a slab, which is using my hands, you can make flowers, and lots of flowers. Now, if they want to decorate it, I would recommend that they put their initials right in the middle. So that's an easy way that they know it's theirs. And so they could just simply write their initials so that way they can find their flowers later. The more that these things hang off, the more fragile they are. So this is where I see things break and firing, is if there's some flower leaves that are really skinny because they're just more fragile. Really where the description of a flower comes in is the glaze. And something that you guys can decide is if you'd like for us to glaze your pieces, or if you would like to glaze your pieces. Whatever you want is fine. Just make sure that everyone that participates knows that if it's going to be a community glaze or if you guys are going to be glazing your own pieces. Another consideration is sometimes tiles break, and we try our very, very best, but just know on occasion it is a mosaic, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about a mosaic, is that all of those little pieces, broken or whole, are gonna make the beautiful image and tell the story. And all of that is lovely. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free. We're gonna have a Word document for you and a glaze recipe. We have the awesome Mako donate all of their glazes for this project. So we'll be using stroke and coat glazes to decorate the flowers and all of the other details. I appreciate you taking time to make tiles for the UvaldeLove project. To find out more about it, go to UvaldeLove.com. We look forward to this mural coming together. Follow us on our Instagram page at Community Arts. Thank you.